Steve and Alan's pro tips in a short time. Learn a lot.
Hey, Alan.
Hey, Steve.
So let's admit it, most people can be hypocrites from time to time, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably accurate, maybe even more than time to time, but of course not you, Steve.
Right. Yeah, I wish. I'm as guilty as everyone else. I don't think people should be looking at their phones while they're in their cars. And I don't do it while I'm actually driving, but I will definitely look down at my phone when I get to a stoplight, sometimes get honked at by the person behind me. Not proud of that.
Yeah, I in my corporate training world, I do a lot of instruction on how to give feedback, the value of feedback, frequent feedback. I have employees, I'm terrible at giving them feedback. I'm super happy with them, so they should know they're doing fine.
Right. So, newsflash, listeners, your co hosts are not perfect. However, Alan, I'd like to think you and I are common in one area. Those behaviors that we most want to see from our students, we do our absolute best to make sure we model those. And I think that includes making sure we avoid some of those less desirable behaviors too.
Yeah, I mean, I think of when I work with students traveling or in workshops, I want them to be interactive with each other and with the staff of the places that we're at. And so I try really hard to face them and be fully present with them whenever they visit with me, and then try to actually create opportunities for us to visit with each other and just be fully present.
Yeah, and for me, in my attempt to make sure my students put a lot of thought into their self reflections after a teaching demonstration, I also put a lot of thought into my responses to their reflections. I feel like if I just phoned it in with, yeah, that's a great job, 10 out of 10, I worry they would eventually start phoning it in too.
Yeah. So, what's the tip today?
Well, I hope people will think about exactly what we just discussed. We've all got inconsistencies, but I've noticed that the very best teachers do a good job of avoiding inconsistencies when it comes to the modeled behavior for their students. Not only do they model the behaviors they want, they avoid being counterexamples.
What do you mean by counterexamples?
Yeah, sure. I'll give an example of avoiding being a counterexample, if that makes any sense. I have kind of a difficult time staying caught up on email messages, especially for this podcast and my arranging. So, those side hustles, basically. I go out of my way to make sure I am not being judgy or mad when arranging clients or podcast guests aren't prompt with their email responses. It wouldn't be fair, and I think those folks would be extra annoyed by my inconsistency.
Okay, I see what you mean now. So, yeah, it can be easy for teachers to slip into the do as I say, not as I do mentality. But students, as well as parents and colleagues and bosses, they'll pick up on this. I think of an example from my early years of teaching. I was addicted to Diet Coke. I always had a Diet Coke at my podium. And this was back in the days when there was no food or drink allowed in any classrooms, and students would call me on it. And I would say, I just hope that someday when you get a degree and you have a professional job that you can have a soda pop at your workstation also. And that was so clever on my part. Those are the years of my career where I didn't retain students very well.
Yeah. Have you noticed anything more recently as you've worked with teachers or clients?
Oh, there are some situations in which clients who are teachers do have to meet some deadlines. And sometimes they have a lot going on and they play a little fast and loose with those deadlines. And so I expect that, and I'm cool with that if I adapt to that reality. And I always hope, kind of like what you're saying, that they extend the same grace to their own students.
Right. So in this case, the problem would be an inconsistency where these teachers aren't great, maybe with deadlines as far as it pertains to registrations for a festival or, whatever forms for student travel.
Sure.
But then they don't extend that same grace to their students. We're not necessarily saying, hey, everybody, be perfect.
Right.
We're saying, if you expect others to give you a little bit of grace on deadlines, then you need to extend that to your students and parents. At least that's my take. What about you?
This is a central message actually in some of my workshops and leadership curriculum and team development curriculum, both as students and adults. It's not about perfection. It's that people can often learn a lot if you role model grace for those sorts of things. I'm all about that. So please think about that before you get irritated with a student or a parent or a colleague, because it's really possible that maybe, you've done the same thing yourself, or I've done the same thing myself. So extending that grace, I think, is important.
For sure. Yeah, we aren't suggesting a complete overhaul here, but if you, like me, are regularly a little late to starting your rehearsals, then you might want to consider going easier on students when they are a few seconds late to their spots.
Yeah. So think twice before getting irritated with a student, parent, or colleague, because it's very possible you've exhibited the same behavior yourself.
This reminds me of a Sunday school story about casting the first stone or something. Maybe I should go to church with you this Sunday, Alan.
You are always welcome at St. Timothy's, my son.
All right. Thank you.
Steve and Alan's Pro Tips in a short time. Learn a lot.